Nee, was maar by daai opleiding gewees en ek het maar skeef geval. Oh my hemel.
Dis te speel saam met die kinders.
Nie hoef te speel nie man.
Dis ook net 'n minuut om te sê.
Onthou hulle gaan baie, ek dink hulle gaan baie van die vrae na jou toe.
Ja.
Jy is gemaklik. As my nie my bel dan ek kan nie praat nie. Ek sal die eerste jou noem. Regtig?
Ekskuus ek kan nie.
Nee, dan sê ek hoor jy skakel vir my te bak. Regtig? Goed.
Dan neem jy af en toe op. As jy doen. Hupsie.
nou wat ik dat wat ze spelen. Ja, ik wil niet nou en die het weer of kan ik my tippe weer opstaan en dit. Alles is spannend. Ik moet verstaan. Ik kan sê dit. Maar nie 'n breedvoerige gesprek oor die vloer nie. Dit is vir later. Wat sien? Ek kan sien dit nou. Ja, want hulle stel jy altyd die goed uit. Dit is 'n aksieprobleem. Ek moet op staan. Is hierdie salsa mouse in die stelsel? Nee, so gaan. Nee, ek weet. Ek was op man, ek sê. Ja. Ja. Nou, en ek het so een reël van media, ek sê van die report af. Ek het 'n paar keer voor en na dit sê. Dit stabiel op campus studente verwys. Dat kan eigenlijk zo. Dat het studenten met campus wat maar heeft eigenlijk die eerste uiteraard. Studenten verwijs naar de komende structuur en financiële studenten kan krijgen. Nee, dat is een goede voorbeeld van een goede studiefonds. Is bijvoorbeeld de gemeenschapsgebaseerde studiefonds. Dus van jaar 3 jaar 5 en dan zijn niet zo gesteeld worden.
Maar begin in die spaar media wat ons sneller is, hulle kan ontkom. Ek wil net bedank vir vanoggend die by mekaar kom. Dit weer is partykeer makliker om 'n verklaring van hulle skrif te maak. Maar ek dink kwessies soos hierdie moet mense persoonlik aanneem. Kardinaal universiteitskrisis is tans op 'n punt waar die publiek regtig nie meer moet het nie en hopeloos en moedeloos kyk oor die kinders op die toekoms regtig. Maar by solidariteit beweging dink ons anders en dis 'n slibhuis op te stel ons mens met 'n krisis nie en skielik oplos. Soos van julle weet, en meeste van julle weet van die media, bestaan die solidariteitsbeweging in 18 instellings. En die 3 groot lede-instellings sluit in solidariteit afgevorm aan hand. En hierdie instellings teenwoordig bykans half-miljoen lede en ondersteuners. En hierdie mense is bekommerde ouers, bekommerde grootouers, personeel en kinders in ons land, wat direk deur hierdie debakel geraak word. En daarom sal ons en mag ons vandag ons planne bekendstel en hulle by te sit. Nou, elke instelling, soos julle weet, en soos julle volgens sal hoor, het ieders 'n aandeel by die universiteite. So ek wil net hierdie geleentheid aan gebruik maak om die paneel net aan julle voor te stel. En ons begin daar op die punt met ons vriend Barnard. Hy is 'n ISA-Tuks kandidaat vir ISA en hy is die voorsitter van Afrika gedag daar. Langs ons sit Mornay Mostert, hy is die nasionale Afrika woordvoerder. So Kali Kriel, hy voerende hoof van Afriforum. Slibhuis is die voorsitter van die solidariteit beweging. Dis ons Alta van die Kerk, sy is 'n ouer en wat kinders op universiteit het en dat ook 'n bietjie van ons sal vertel en impak. En dan het ons Dr. Dani bring, hy is 'n voerende hoof van hand. En ek gaan nie verder meer uitbrei van die media net daar uit daai kant ontvang wat inkom. Ek stel graag vir Slibhuis aan die beurt.
Dankie dames en here, dankie vir die almal se teenwoordigheid. Die huidige krisis by universiteite gaan nie meer oor fooie, dit gaan oor die toekoms van die universiteite self. Nou the major temptation of violent protest is that it looks like a shortcut to the good life, an instant improvement of the world without having to walk the long and difficult road to self-improvement yourself. Daarom verwerdig jy nie eers om die bes met die studies te doen, van woorde soos plig en verantwoordelikheid vorm nie deel van jou ideologiese wapenrusting. Jy gebruik jou regte aanvalling soos 'n swaard en sien nie jou eie weerloosheid sonder die skuld van verantwoordelikheid raak nie. Elke toegewing deur die regering en universiteitsbestuure is 'n nou bewys dat die woedende eis geregverdig was en toe die daaropvolgende groter eis. Met 'n ketting van nimmer eindigende toenemende eise en toegewende onderhandelings, wil jy jou groep die kampioene van die slagoffer Olimpiade maak. So word daar binne weke afgebreek wat oor dekades opgebou is en hou hierdie studente hulle self gijslaar en selfgeskepte tronk van hulle eie nihilisme. Die tragiese is dat mense wat hulle self as slagoffer sien, uiteindelik die slagoffer van hulle eie selfbeskouing word. Daarteenoor is diegene wat verantwoordelikheid vir hulle sukses neem, uiteindelik die suksesvol is. Want in die regte lewe is die lang pad die kort pad en die kort pad 'n doodloopstraat. Dan sê as hierdie stellings vir my oordrewe klink, wil ek net vir die 2 stukkies statistiek neem. Die eerste een is dat navorsing deur professor Vaas van der Berg en ander ekonome van die Universiteit van Stellenbosch het bevind dat net 4% van matrikulante, ons praat nie van mense wat graad 1 begin het, ons praat van net 4% matrikulante uiteindelik graad kry in Suid-Afrika. Die tweede is wat professor Adam Mabie gister genoem het by die Universiteit van die Witwatersrand, dat daar byna R1 miljard se skade al aangerig by die universiteite en daar is nog nie een student wat gearresteer onskuldig bevind is daaraan. Daarom sê ons net dat dit gaan nie meer oor fooie nie, dit gaan oor die toekoms van die universiteite. En die kern van ons boodskap vandag is dat ons daarop aandring dat die universiteite maandag oopgemaak word en dat hulle oop en veilig bly vir almal wat studeer. Ons kan nie verder toelaat dat 'n klein minderheid oproerige studente die groot meerderheid studente ontneem van hulle reg om te studeer. Die universiteitsbestuur het tot dusver met baie groot geduld geluister na die minderheidsstudente wat die universiteite ontwrig. Ons sê dit is nou die tyd dat hulle die meerderheid van die studente se kant kies.
Ons dring daarop aan dat die akademie dadelik na die reses hervat moet word terwyl onderhandelings voortgaan om 'n oplossing te vind. Nou, ons 10-puntplan gaan ek net die hoofpunte uitlig, dan gaan ek vir my kollegas vra om verder daaroor uit te brei. In die eerste plek is dit vir ons baie belangrik dat daar geskakel word van ons kant af met die universiteite, die regering, politieke partye, studenteorganisasies van alle groepe oor die hele spektrum en die polisie om die situasie te normaliseer en 'n veilige akademiese omgewing te verseker. Ons is ook bereid van ons kant af om formele of informele alliansies oor politieke grense heen aan te gaan as dit nodig is om die toekoms van die universiteit te verseker. Tweede punt gaan oor regstappe. Ons ondersoek in hierdie stadium regstappe teen universiteite wat nie die reg van die meerderheid studente wat vreedsaam wil studeer beskerm. Ons is ook bereid uiteraard om ouers by te staan om eise in te stel waar nodig. So vir ons gaan dit oor die regte van die pro-studie studente ook. Dan die derde punt gaan oor studentraadsverkiesings. Ons dink daarop aan dat die uitgestelde studentraadsverkiesings by Tikkie Stellenbosch en Kossies dadelik plaasvind, omdat die uitstel van hierdie studentraadsverkiesings beteken dat self aangestelde aktiviste namens al die studente verraad in plaas van die demokraties verkeerde studente. Die vierde punt gaan oor dosente en personeel, die se veiligheid en se werk en se navolging vir ons van groot belang is en ons is bekommerd daaroor dat hulle diensvoorwaardes en werksomstandighede negatief deur hierdie krisis geraak sal word. Vyfde punt gaan oor die studiekostes waaroor afgelope week sal uitbrei, maar waar ons deurlopend sal deelneem in gesprekke om oplossings vir die kostekrisis te vind. Dan die vergroting van die Helpenaanse studiefonds is ons sesde punt, omdat in die praktyk, dames en here, kos universiteitswese wêreldwyd duur. Dit is nie moontlik om iets gratis aan te bied nie, dan kry jy waarvoor jy betaal en ons het groot planne om die studiefonds verder uit te brei. Die sewende punt gaan oor Afrikaans, oor ons sake daar, want ons is bekommerd dat die universiteitsbestuur se minagting van grondwetlike regte bydra tot die klimaat van die minagting van die reg wat deur klein groepies aktivisties studente gepleeg word. Die agste punt is uitnemendheid. Ons glo dat universiteite internasionale instellings van uitnemendheid in Afrika moet wees. En ons is bekommerd oor die daling van verskeie Suid-Afrikaanse universiteite op wêreldranglyste. So dit is vir ons 'n belangrike punt om om toe te sien dat politieke projekte nie universiteite verder benadeel. Dan pro-studie byeenkomste waar ons verskillende pro-studie vreedsame pro-studie byeenkomste beoog van studente, selfs ouers en universiteitspersoneel waar nodig. Dan die laaste punt gaan rondom ons eie instelling akademia. Ons verbind ons in hierdie vorige 9 punte tot die bevordering van die openbare universiteite. Dit is vir ons absoluut ononderhandelbaar dat die openbare universiteite moet terugkeer na normaal toe. Aan die ander kant glo ons dat private universiteite soos in ander lande ook deel van die oplossing is. Navorsing wys daarop dat private universiteite in Afrika binne 5 jaar openbare universiteite gaan verbygaan en ons gaan ook groot klem plaas op die uitbreiding van akademie en daar sal ons ook graag saamwerk waar ons kan. Ek gaan my kollegas vra om meer uit te brei en dan is u welkom om daarna dan ook verdere vrae te vra.
Thank you, Flip. Just with regard, you know that there are 10 points. I will just make a few remarks on some of these points, and my colleagues around this table will then also make some inputs. With regard to discussions with other groups, I think if you look at specifically the referendum that was held at WITS, which showed that 77% of students and staff want to continue with their studies, it also shows us that it's a problem that is faced at the moment by pro-study students. It's a problem for both black and white. And that's why we would enter into discussions with a number of organizations that represent the broad student community. You know that in February We had discussions with the Gauteng leadership of the ANC. We will continue with those discussions. Other discussions that we are having at the moment are on a sensitive stage, so we won't mention the organizations, but Enrico is involved in discussions with youth groups, so you might just want to say a few words in that regard.
Yes, thank you, Colin. At the student level, we have approached various student organizations, and the movement that you see at this stage on campuses is almost single affiliated. The majority of student groups and student societies on campus does not support the process that is happening at this stage, and agree that mediation must happen between these groups to actually find a sustainable solution towards the end of this year. Then also from AfriForum Youth, we would like to pledge students to, specifically at the University of Pretoria, to get the university open on Monday and to stand together for this, to ignore the intimidation techniques that's going on at the moment, and to stand together as a united student body to open the university on Monday. Yeah, I think that's all from my side.
Thank you, Enrico. Then you'll see that the second point is legal action. From AfriForum side, we have already instructed our legal team to look at the possibilities to take legal action with regard to various issues. The first thing that we are seeing at the moment is that the pro-study students are harmed in the process, and they are actually the victims of a small group of aggressors that we see at universities. These losses are physical. We've had many students that have been assaulted simply for not participating in these disruptions. We've seen them being physically harmed, pepper spray used on them to disrupt classes. But then there's of course also financial losses. Students pay a large amount of money to study at these universities, and they lose classes. We have one example, for instance, for people that made arrangements for a December holiday, which is going to be interrupted if the study year is prolonged. So our legal team would look at all these issues and then take legal actions either against the university, but also against individual student leaders that are at the forefront of the disruptions we're seeing at the moment. We're also looking at legal action to force universities to do their job, because at many universities we've seen simply campus security standing idle and not taking any action. And we call on parents as well as students that have suffered losses or will still suffer losses because what is going on, to contact us and register their loss, so that when our legal team looks at the matter, we know how many people we can represent either through a class action or individual legal action. On AfriForum Youth's webpage, there is a petition where people can register their claims, or simply let us know what their harm is or what their losses are, so that we can take on the issue. Then with regard to the third point, the student council elections, that is also something that will be handled by AfriForum Youth.
Thank you, Colin. So the University of Pretoria finds itself in the second year now in a row that the SRC elections did not complete or reach completion. The problem with this is that the majority student voice on campus is silenced by the university allowing students from their point of view to get onto the SRC, and this is mostly then filled with political activists. You don't reach true student leadership by only having political activists on your SRC, where you ignore the majority of the student voice, with them actually electing onto the student council the people that will represent them and serve them on the student council. We urge students on, well, firstly, we insist that the universities have the normal process of the SRC elections to get pro-study student leaders on the SRC to actually represent these students who want to go to the campus on the SRC. Secondly, we urge students to vote for the student leaders who actually represent them on the student council who will be the voice, who at this stage is the silent majority on campus, to actually get their voice out through these people, ensure true leadership on the student council, and also for the university to continue as it is and open in the future. So that will be all from my side for SRC. I think it's also important that TICS is not an isolated incident. I think if you look at other campuses across the whole of South Africa, these disruptions has made sure that the SRC elections does not continue. And furthermore, we see that students that are on the SRC at this stage is taking part in the violence on different campuses. So we urge students to please go and to get responsible representative council that will stand up for the majority, because the majority of students want to go and study at the university, and we're seeing that there is no action being taken against these students, and we want to urge students to have a representative body that can actually stand up for the students to say, let's keep a campus open, and let's ensure that the students have a safe environment to go and study at the university.
Now, with regard to the staff, of course, the most important priority for us with regard to the staff is the safety of the staff and the work environments. We are very concerned about many people who are struggling to get on with their research and with their work. And we are also concerned about the possible negative financial impact on the conditions of services, because of this crisis.
Then, point 5 with regard to the study cost, Enrico.
Yes, the study costs at the university. I think it's important to understand that AfriForum Youth has different structures at universities, and these structures are actively pertaining and making connections with the university to ensure to get an amicable solution where students can go to the university, and where the study funding is a problem, where this problem can be addressed. So we are ongoing with discussions with not only the university but also other political organizations to ensure that we get an amicable solution. But furthermore, I think a problem, and it relates to the SRC problem that we see around campuses, is that students are not aware of the different funding schemes at the university. So AfriForum Youth structures on campus actively partakes in when a student comes with a complaint to ensure that they inform them on the different structures. It's not only NSFAS, but NSFAS is a very big fund that helps students with study funding, but to help them to acquire these bursaries and to ensure that not only NSFAS, but we see that there's a bunch of other financial institutions that can help with study funding, and I think the most important one to mention is community community-based funding structures, and I believe Dr. Brink will maybe inform us hereafter also on this point. But it's very important for us that we ensure that the students are represented and the students know what their options are with regards to funding. So we will continue with our discussions with the universities, with management and other groups to ensure that this problem is resolved, and furthermore that the students on merit this problem can be addressed.
I'd like to add to Mike's point there on the cost of studies. Just two initial things from Solidarity Helping Hand side. The first is that we want to address the popular belief that it is true always that black students and poor students and white students are the rich students. I believe it's the viewpoint of the whole Solidarity movement, but also specifically from Helping Hand, that we can testify to the fact that lots of Afrikaans students and their parents find it very difficult to fund studies. We have just closed our cycle of applications for study funding from Helping Hand, and we received 5,300 applications, which testifies to the fact that there are lots of parents out there that are struggling to pay the fees. second initial point that I want to make is that we support funded education. We believe that that high quality tertiary education cannot be free, and so we make plans accordingly. So we have a philosophy that we do not believe that tertiary education of a high standard can be free, and we make plans accordingly. Ons planne met betrekking tot studiekoste is om ons studiefonds en dit adresseer op punt 6 spesifiek rondom die begroting van ons studiefonds. Ons vind dat 'n suksesvolle befondsing van behoeftige studente se studies in twee vernootlikhede is. Die een is gewillige skenkers wat die saak verstaan hoe dat die befondsing van studies die swaarkry van kinders in die toekoms oorkom. En dan tweedens het ons studente wat inkoop by die befondsing van hulle eie studies en terugbetaal aan die lenings wat hulle gegee is. Wanneer die studente kwalifikasies bereik, dan besef hulle dat hulle kwalifikasies gekry het, daardeur kan hulle inkomste verdien en daarom betaal hulle terug. En 'n studiefonds op hulle betaal nie terug. By helpende het ons die sukses en sê dat beide van hierdie werk. Ons het baie gewillige skenkers en daarom het ons tans 'n studiefonds van meer as R100 miljoen. Maar in die tweede plek is ons tweede vernoot in plek. Meer as 98% van ons studente wat lenings kry, betaal lenings terug. Met ander woorde, ons is besig om te bou 'n gesonde stelsel van daar waar ons wel glo dat studente moet betaal vir hooggehalte tersiêre opleiding. In die tweede plek die feit bestaan dat Afrikaanse studente wel behoeftig is, werk ons aan 'n volhoubare stelsel waarin beide vernote in plek is. Ons het onlangs gespreek van planne met betrekking tot die begroting van ons studiefondse is aan die een kant natuurlik ons boodskap uitbring dat ons duisende studente het wat behoeftig is, Afrikaanse studente wat behoeftig is, dat ons graag hulle wil befonds, maar dan aan die ander kant maak ons seker dat die stelsels in plek is sodat die tweede vernoot in plek is, en dit is die student die self behoeftig is aanvanklik, die befonds word om te studeer, dan die geld terugkeer. En dit het 'n steunbare effek wat op exponentiële groei in ons studiefonds teweeg bring. So, hulle is praat van om ons studiefonds verder uit te brei, so ons boodskap bly verkondig dat die goeie ding is, dat het goeie nuus is om die behoeftige arm studente se studies te befonds, en dan in die tweede plek is ons stelsels, daarna na span, ek kan getuig dat ons stelsels waterdig is aan die stelselkant, maar in die emosionele inkoopkant is die 5000 studente wat ons al befonds is ingekoop en vele die kant terug so dat ons befonds is. So dit wat tot die 56 befonds is.
Then just with regard to Afrikaans, I think it's unfortunate that Afrikaans has been abused for another agenda. The Afrikaans Must Fall campaign is not really about Afrikaans, it's simply to promote the revolutionary agenda. And I think the problem that we have at the moment is that university management seem to think that these protesting small minority are appeasable. And the fact is they are unappeasable because their agenda is a revolutionary agenda. If you look at how the process started, initially it started with Rhodes Must Fall, then at the University of Cape Town, and then we saw that the minority of protesters were successful. Then they looked for the next issue to use. Then they started using the Fees Must Fall. It was then announced that they would, this year there would be no fee rise, as we saw. But because these students are unappeasable, then they started looking for another issue. And then they found the outsourcing must fall issue. They were successful with this campaign at most universities, and then they had to look for another issue, and then it was the Afrikaans Must Fall issue. Unfortunately, because the management think that they can appease these students, they also then gave in, and we saw Afrikaans falling at the University of the Free State, at UNISA, at the University of Pretoria, and we also see movement in this regard at the University of Stellenbosch. When they were successful with this campaign, then they looked for another issue, and it was Fees Must Fall again. If you go and look at the statement by the Minister of Higher Education, Bladen Zimandi. And by the way, AfriForum differs with him on quite a lot of issues. But if you look at what he said in his statement, it actually adhered to the problems of specifically poor students as well as the so-called missing middle. But because these protests are used for a revolutionary agenda, then again, these students were unappeasable. And if we don't take a strong stance now and say, well, we're going to take on this small group of students that are disrupting the universities to the detriment of the middle ground, the vast majority of students that want to study, they would simply, if they are successful now, take on another issue, and it doesn't bode well for the future of our universities. What, with regard to Afrikaans specifically, we believe that the university managements were wrong when they took away Afrikaans. We believe it's unconstitutional. We have started with a legal case against the University of the Free State first. We were successful in the Bloemfontein High Court. Also, the efforts by the university to appeal was not successful in the Bloemfontein High Court. They will probably go to the appeal court, and I foresee that this matter will go to the Constitutional Court. But AfriForum and Solidarity takes this legal action jointly, and we will fight to the bitter end for Afrikaans to remain, because we believe Afrikaans broadens access. It's actually quite ironic that students that are fighting for the decolonization of universities says, well, we need education to be done in English, a colonial language. So you want to use English, a colonial language, for the decolonization of universities, which we believe is totally inappropriate. What we see is that, not that Afrikaans must fall, but that Sepedi and other African languages should rise. And that is what we fight for everybody to feel at home at our institutions. And the way to do that is for multilingual institutions. And that's why we are not in favor of the Anglicization of our universities, and we will take up the legal action till the bitter end.
Dankie. Dan punt 8 wat gaan oor uitnemendheid excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, in the real world, if a country wants to remain internationally competitive, our universities must be internationally competitive. So what we look at is internationally competitive universities, universities of excellence in Africa. Do you think it is quite possible it can be done? Universities can be welfare institutions. Of course, poor students must be helped, and like Talia said, we support the efforts of the minister to gradually realize that. But in principle, universities, if you want to remain competitive, if you want to develop and train and teach the students, and if you know, up to international standards, and if you want to do international research, then that universities need to be funded. So that is very important to us, that universities stay international, on an international level. The pro-study?
AfriForum Youth also wants to organize pro-study meetings. And what we've seen is in the past few months, we have got a lot of requests, not only from students, but from parents as well, that they don't want to take part in the violent action that is going on in universities, but they want to still do something and still get together to make a stand to say, listen, it is important, we want to open the university and we want to ensure that the student safety on campuses is ensured. And that's why we're going to organize pro-study meetings, and we are going to make a call on all pro-study students to attend these meetings and to take part and to say, we want university to open up, we want to go study, and we want to have a place where it is safe to go study. And it's also important for us to make a call to university to explain to these students and to explain to these parents on why they keep on closing this university and not addressing the problem of the small minority that have criminal actions assaulting students on campus, for management to explain their position and to say, this is what we have done, or this is what we are going to do to ensure, firstly, that the campus opens on Monday and stays open during the rest of the year, and secondly, to ensure the safety on what measures would they put in place to ensure the safety. And this pro-study meetings will ensure that there is a place for students to voice their concerns.
If I may just add to what Morna says, why it's important for these meetings, we need to be able to form a channel where the voice of pro-study students can be heard. Because what we are seeing at the moment is a lot of frustrations building up by a vast majority of students on our campuses that want to go and study. And the situation that they are confronted with is a small group of aggressors, university leadership that simply cave into the demands of these groups, and in the end the universities are closed to the detriment of this majority. And what I am very worried about is when this frustration comes to a boiling point, and that the vast majority of students would feel that they are not protected by the university security, that they're not protected by the police, and that their frustration would boil over. And I think that is something we need to prevent, and this is a message to university management as well as the police. You need to take action to make sure that the frustrations of pro-study students don't boil over, and that we see students get into a situation where they are forced to protect themselves.
Dankie. Dan die laaste punt, dames en heren, gaan oor die uitbouw van akademia. Ek het nou gesê dat ons verbind ons tot die bevordering van die openbare universiteite. En ek het ook gesê, dit is ons ononderhandelbaar, dit gaan altyd deel van die oplossing bly. Baie werkende, gewone werkende mense betaal belastings daarvoor, en dit is ons die rede vir die hele konferensie, is omdat ons weet dat die universiteite moet oop maandag en hulle moet oop bly. Maar ons glo ook dat private universiteite soos in ander lande in Afrika en elders in die wêreld deel van die oplossing is. Ek wil ook vir altal van die kerk wat 'n ma is van 'n student, dat sy net ook wat jy sê hoe sy as ouer dit beleef, omdat dit nie net 'n impak op die studente nie en op die dosente nie, maar ook op die ouers.
Dankie vir. Ek praat uit die perspektief van 'n ouer van 'n 3de jaar ingenieurstudent by die buiten die koste wat ons ouers ervaar. Jy weet, die klasgelde is maar ongeveer 1/3 van die koste van 'n universiteitskursus. Die verblyf, die sakgeld, die vervoerkoste. Ons kinders wat ver bly, wat regtig probleme ondervind om met die kort kennis hier wat die universiteit moeskielik besluit om te sluit, by die huis uit te kom. En nou wil hulle, ons wil graag die universiteit met maandag begin. Die studente is bekommerd, as hulle terugkom Sondag en hulle begin maandag in die universiteit besluit Dinsdag om sluit weer, dan het hulle al die koste aangegaan om terug te kom en dan moet hulle dalk weer weggaan. Dit het 'n absolute rimpel-effek ook op van hierdie studente. My daughter is a 3rd-year mechanical engineering student, and one of her projects that they are doing, they do in a group. There are 9 students in this group, of which 5 students are black students. None of them are participating in these protests. And their parents have made such huge sacrifices to send them to university. And one of them said to me that he simply must finish as soon as possible because he has siblings that want to come and study. And one of his jobs is to get a job as soon as possible and to help his parents fund his siblings to come and study. Also, these students have to work December. It's part of their curriculum. And they rely on the money they earn there to fund part of their studies or their living costs next year. If the university cannot open next week or interview or if the academic year cannot finish when it should, it will have an impact on their holiday work that they have to do. And I also want to say that as far as the university is concerned, we have very few communications as parents from the university. We have to rely on what our children tell us. The university very quickly sends us SMSs and tell us your study fees for the year is due or whatever, but never any communication telling us that we are closing, the children have to leave their residences or whatever. So I think as far as that is concerned, universities should actually take parents into consideration more. I just want to also add, as far as free studies, free university fees are concerned, no fees. There are a few countries in the world where the students don't pay fees, where it is for free. But more than 90% of the working people in those countries pay taxes. They have jobs and they pay taxes. And the admission requirements to go and study in those countries are very, very strict. They actually identify the children before they go to high school. They have to go in Germany to a specific high school that prepares them for university study. And it's not free for everyone. It is free for the very select. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
Dames en heren, as ek kan afsluit, dat die regering en universiteite het groot aandeel in hierdie hele krisis. As jy, wanneer dit 'n klein probleempie is, tyds begin aanspreek, dan kan jy verhoed dat dit 'n baie groot probleem raak. Van die universiteite is nou besig om te maai wat hulle gepaai het, omdat hulle die probleem gelos het, dat het groot raak en dat het eintlik 'n reggeld veldbrand geraak het, wat baie moeilik is om te keer. So universiteite moet die verantwoordelikheid vat. Hulle het die meeste universiteitsbestuure het hierdie probleem self laat ontwikkel tot 'n baie groot en moeilik beheerbare probleem. Die tweede een is natuurlik die regering self wat die befondsing van universiteite laat afneem het oor die jare presentasie gewys. Maar dan ook, as jy kyk na NSFAS, die National Student Financial Aid Scheme, wat so swak bestuur is, dat ek gebruik die voorbeeld, ek sê dat die Japaneese studiefonds en die NSFAS saam kry 100% terugbetaling. Die Japaneese is 98%. Maar ons glo dat indien die gemeenskap, die belastingbetaler of die gemeenskap, die studente help om dan hulle kwalifikasies te kry en hulle dan 'n werk het, dan dink ons dit is ook daai studente se verantwoordelikheid om weer die volgende geslag te help. Ons kan nie 'n situasie hê waar professor Adama Diep sê R1 miljard al sy skade al amper gedoen is en nie een student is wat daarvoor aangekla of skuldig bevind nie. So die hele vervolgingsgesag sal ook hulle kant toe bring om hierdie probleem dan op te los en dan laastens ook net, ons kan nie 'n land wat net 4% van sy matriekleerlinge uiteindelik laat gradueer is nie 'n land wat homself voorberei vir sukses. En daardie syfer sal dramaties moet opgaan en die studente self het 'n geweldige groot verantwoordelikheid.
Is there any questions from the outside? Any member of the panel? You can just back where you're from and ask the question.
Hi, I'm Bobby Kosana from the Citizen. I actually have a couple of questions. The first one, you mentioned that the University of Free State also struck up the concept of medium of instruction. You took them to court and won that case. I just wanted to know on what ground did you win the case there? Number two, students at the University of Pretoria that were against Afrikaans also mentioned that they were against the strong Afrikaans culture in residences in the university, and whereas the Afrikaans culture was embraced, they had to go do their seniors work, and they came from places where they didn't relate to Afrikaans culture. Why do you still insist on having Afrikaans as a medium of instruction? Number three, you mentioned that a lot of students still struggle to pay their fees. They're assisted by helping hands, they have extra work. why do you guys still believe in, or still don't believe in free education? And I think it leads to my next question, where you mentioned that in other countries, 90% of the people pay tax to support free education. But the public protector, Madonna, recently said that there wasn't any wasteful expenditure in government institutions or parastatals such as ESCOM and the SABC would be able to afford free education. What is your comment regarding that?
Well, I think if you look at the Constitution, it says that everyone has the right to education, in the language of their choice, where it is practical to do so. And the fact is, at the University of the Free State, over the last years, it was shown that it was indeed practical to do so. So this is infringing on the constitutional right to access to education in the language of your choice. And those were the grounds in which the court ruled in our favor. What is important is that if you look at specifically at matric results in our country, and I think the problem starts at schools level, where 80% of our schools are dysfunctional. But if you can go and look at the matric results, those students that fare the best are those children that have the opportunity to study in their mother tongue, the previous Model C schools that are English language schools, as well as the previous Model C schools that are Afrikaans language schools. And you get a benefit. That is why we are saying that one should, rather than narrowing down mother tongue education, one should rather broaden it. And I think we should start at schools level. We cannot, I remember being on a radio program once on Metro FM, and I propagated the benefit of mother tongue education and the fact that studies internationally as well locally shows that those students that get mother education fare the best. I tried to promote that, but you have many parents that think that if you go for mother tongue education, it would be to the detriment of their children. They say, well, you want to keep our children out of the economy, keep them away from English. But the problem is, if you're not able to master hard concepts, especially in maths and sciences, in your mother tongue, you won't be able to master it in another language, and then you might in the end become proficient in English, but you haven't mastered what you needed to learn. And what Flip mentioned just now, that only 4% of students that write matric eventually get a degree. It is terrible, because we want to put in more money into higher education, but only a small group benefits. If you look actually at the grade 1 numbers, it's even worse, because we know that half the students that start grade 1 and never get to write matric. They fall out of school along the way. So if you look at if the situation remains the same at the moment, 2% of children that go into grade 1, that went into grade 1 this year, will eventually get a university degree. So now we're fighting over funding for 2% of students, while we believe that we should go to the schools level and fix that. And mother tongue education is a cornerstone of fixing that. And so we are fighting for Afrikaans and the continuation of Afrikaans, because if you're going to start narrowing down that, there's no way that you will broaden multilingualism and mother tongue education. So although we feel strongly about Afrikaans, also Afrikaans is part of the speaker's identity, and also according to the Constitution, you have the right to dignity. And we want to claim that dignity to say that we should have the right to do that. But we cannot fight on behalf of other language speakers, but we can say, parents should say, our children's dignity, culture, and language should be respected. We are demanding mother tongue education, and that should grow also to university level. With regard to your question at the University of Pretoria, I believe that there's place under the sun for everybody in this country, irrespective of your culture, and the university should go at lengths to make sure that everybody feels at home, and that is possible. But if you're going to start having demands, if students say, well, I want to feel at home, so I want Afrikaans to be scrapped to feel at home. In the end, then they say, well, for me to feel at home, I need to make sure that somebody else don't feel at home at this university. And I think it is possible to unify students. As our constitution says, that we need to have unity in diversity. And people wanting to eradicate Afrikaans from universities aren't serious about diversity. They want monolingual situation where there's no room for diversity and where only they feel at home. And we say, let's build a society where everybody feels at home, and part of that is to have mutual recognition and respect amongst communities. And to have mutual recognition and respect means that you cannot go about to say Afrikaans must fall, because then you're saying somebody else's culture must fall for yourself to be propelled in life. And I think the conflict that we've had in this country over many years is because we weren't able to find a solution that we came together, build a future in diversity, and that's why we are adamant that Afrikaans must fall is something we should fight. Where there are specific examples where students feel that they don't feel at home, then those should be addressed, rather than simply saying, well, let's use a broad blanket, let's become English, and despite the fact that English is a colonial language.
Thank you. Yeah, if you compare South African school results with that of countries like Botswana and other, it becomes very clear that there's a language problem more than an education problem. Your question was about free education. Of course, it would be wonderful if education and most things in the country in life can be free. But if you look at what happened in African universities, you can read Professor Mbende's article yesterday, it was on NetNet, about what happened in Africa when they turn universities in welfare institutions were free everything. In the end, that universities failed because it cost a lot of money to create world-class universities. If you look at what happened in our free schools, in the no-fee schools, they are dysfunctional. Enough proof that you can't get free education on the scale that we would like to. Not even the United States, with their massive economy, not even the United Kingdom have free education. There's also a very interesting article was published yesterday of Professor Nicky Kluter of the Center for Higher Education of the Trust, CHET, about the effect of free education with regard to inequality. And the bottom line was that free education will increase the current inequality. Then I think it is a valid point. Students are very concerned, many of them, about the corruption and the wages. I think that is a very valid point. It sounds on, if you listen to that we can get free education if there's no corruption and wages in South Africa. But even if you get to that point, when there's no corruption, you still have to look at priorities. Must you give the extra money then to students? Must you give it to, people, old people? Must you give it to schools to improve the education? Must you give it to public health, for example? So we will have to look at the priorities there. So it is not practical in South Africa, it is not affordable, it is not affordable in other countries. You have such a situation in many countries, like for example Australia, when there is a very strict mechanism to select children to go to university, then you can study, but afterwards you pay that back automatically. There's 100% pay back the money system there. The tax system look after that, but you can't have the best of all worlds. Give not everyone with money for study. 70% of the people on LIVSA schemes do not get their degrees, according to Professor Cooper. That is a staggering, figure, 70%. So, and also between 2 and 4%, pay back their money. I mean, it is not even affordable, like I said, that kind of scheme in a country like Germany, what about South Africa?
May I just add to that? I think in principle, I feel strongly that any child that wants to go and study and works hard to go and study should have access to university irrespective of what their socio-economic position is. But let me use an example of my 2 sons. I've got an old car that I just said they can drive around with. And week after week I had to say, you better wash this car. Then my one son worked and he was able to buy himself an old car as well. Now I don't have to tell him, you should wash that car. I see him, there's water restrictions so he doesn't use a hose pipe, but he washes that car at every opportunity he gets because he knew he had to work for that. So a child in a township should know that if he or she is able to get to a point where they qualify on merit to be able to go to university, then these funds there should be full funding for such a student. And if such a student passes, in the end of the degree, it should be a loan, it should be a rent-free loan. Then they could pay back money to refund and help the next generation to go and study. But if you simply go to say, well, this is free for all, irrespective if you work at school, irrespective if you work at university, then it would fail. So in principle, I agree with you. Every child that is willing to work hard should be funded. But the free for all is not a model that is sustainable. If you get something for free, it is not something that you cherish.
Yeah, Donica.
I fully agree. It's a fact that any country has enough money to make a certain portion of its society free. The important stakeholder, that's what Kali refers to, the important stakeholder in the success of expensive tertiary educational quality is the student. The student buys it. The student who buys his own old car and washes it. I think we've all had the fear when we were students that if I fail, how the heck will I be able to pay back the money that I loaned to pay it? And that made me pass. Some days in my laziest days I passed just because of the fear of the money. And so the students' buy-in, financial buy-in is important, terribly important in the success of the high-quality, expensive tertiary.
I think just lastly, the very important factor as well is where if the state solely funds all the universities, they have solely the responsibility, or they can say what will happen at that university or not, where you have a community-based system which funds and makes sure that the rights of all the people in that community are respected. If it's only the state, they have the only say with regards to that, all the universities in South Africa. So we want to make sure that there is responsible management too. And if you can just look at the history of NSFAS or the history of Eskom, the management was the problem, where these funds aren't used promptly to ensure that these funds actually come to the people that use that service. So if you go to that system, you're already going to have a problem where mismanagement can take part, and where the students are not going to have the same value in a system where you can use this responsibility to ensure students can go to a university.
And secondly, on the issue of violence being seen in the student violence, what would be your recent government? What do you think this violence is being now seen down in your view? What is there this kind of violence that we see? And lastly, just to inquire, since some of the children or students who are involved in this protest are also white, in the sense, really management and white. So do you think that this no fee or influence not as responsible for that to represent or represent of people?
All right. I think in principle that the university should be autonomous. We all know that academic freedom is also protected in the Constitution, and there is a very important linkage between institutional autonomy and academic freedom. In principle, the universities must decide for themselves. If a university means 8% is the 6% will be enough, we will be very glad. But what happened last year was a mistake. The university should make the decisions themselves in consultation with all the stakeholders, including government. That is the first one. With regard to the protest, of course, these people are all races involved there, and I think it is to the detriment of people, the young people, of students of all races, and their parents, who are sacrificing to keep them on the university. So we do not think it will be a victory for the students, the protesting students, or in some cases, the rioting students, if the government actually to the demands, because that will lead South African universities in a unstable market.
Well, I can agree with Flip. I think the only goal that was reached up until now is to make education more expensive in the sense that students are paying for classes that they don't get. And I think we should also remember that these students that are the addresses at the university are in a minority. And as I've mentioned previously, I believe that they have another agenda, which is a revolutionary agenda, which is not necessarily fees, because they have shown that they choose a new campaign after they've been successful with the previous one. First rates must fall, then fees must fall, then Afrikaans must fall, then outsourcing must fall. So what we believe should happen is that the universities should take a firm stance to say we are going to keep the universities open. The vast majority of students that want to study, that don't have a voice, should get a voice through the various means that we've mentioned around this table. And then we should look at the funding model. And what we've mentioned previously also at the conference is that many of the demands are adhered to in what the minister indeed announced, that there would be no fee rise even for the so-called missing middle. So it shows again that these demands are unappeasable, and the people should say, well, this is enough, we should study, we should have empathy with students that have a real problem for funding, and the assistance programs that are available should be optimized to make sure that a child or a student that wants to work hard can make sure, because what we've seen also, many of the protesters aren't students at these universities. They are bussed in from elsewhere simply to drive another agenda, and that is unfortunate. And although we have sympathy with people that don't have the funding, we cannot allow the funding issue to be abused by a small group that acts in a way that's not to the benefit of the whole student society.
I think we must also look at what is the priority of a university. It's for students to go study, and they want to do this safely. So I think there's a very big problem with universities' management not taking action against this minority students that are violently, and if we look at what happened at Tuks and other universities, it's these students going into classrooms, assaulting students and throwing them out of classes. And these students just want to go study at this university. So this violence, the university management must take action to say we're going to use our disciplinary codes at the different universities and use not only the disciplinary codes, but if it is criminal action as well, to go to the police and make sure that these actions are being dealt with. But what we are seeing is that the universities are only suspending the students that commit these types of crimes. And I think it's important for us also to say that the universities must ensure that we can't allow these criminal acts on our university grounds. And this is the university's responsibility to not only disciplinary but also lay criminal charges against these offenders, which are in the minority. And if they do this, we can see that the big problem would already be addressed, and to ensure that students can go to the university and can go study in a safe environment.
If I can just say to the fees, I think we're all in agreement that it's not a matter of fees must fall, it's a matter of someone else must pay. If Alta's daughter in engineering uses a very expensive imported piece of equipment in the engineering department, I think we're all in agreement that it's not free. It costs a few million US dollars to get this instrument in. So it's not a matter of let this be free, it's someone else must pay for this. Now, it's either the government that takes your and my pieces of the tax and pays for that. In other words, someone else must pay. Or we saying students who can pay must pay for this piece of equipment, their portion of it. And what we as Helping Hands do is we make a plan for the poor student that cannot pay. So we fund them through donors and people that are willing to stand in for them, knowing that it is not free. This piece of equipment that an engineering student uses is not free. Someone else must just pay in the interim. And then the beautiful philosophy that once we've now been equipped to earn money, give it back so that someone else need not pay. But it is not free. That is the fact. Education, firstly, expensive education is never free. It's a matter of someone else must pay. And who must pay? That is the issue. We make a plan for the community to help poor students to pay.
Just that way from
I just want to clarify one thing. You know, every second universities in this open as soon as possible. Does that therefore mean that solidarity movement is not in favor of universities?
No.
You are not in favor?
We are not in favor. We are supporting the pro-study movement, the pro-study students, and the pro-study parents, and we believe it is the great majority. We think that the 2+4 movement, like Talia said, has regenerated into a kind of writing movement, not a protest movement. The solution for students that have a problem, like they can't pay for their studies, we university managements to look at solutions, to talk to them, to see if they can accommodate. So that is a solution, for protesting and needy students. Also writing students, unfortunately, is a police matter, and we want the university management and the South African government to see to it that they support the police to deal with students who make themselves guilty of arson and violence and also intimidation of other students.
Question. Dankie dat jullie bijgewonnen. Thank you to all. There will be some refreshments there outside for you to enjoy, and you can catch the members of the panel for interviews afterwards. Thank you so much.